This video is going to be my reaction to the Ravens finally finishing off their first win over the Pittsburgh Steelers in almost 2 years to the day with a 34-17 victory on Saturday night. They really used what I would say is a tried and true formula in the AFC North in this particular matchup to pull into a virtual tie with the Steelers on top of the AFC North. Derrick Henry runs for 162 yards on 6.8 yards per carry, mind you. Really, I thought shredded the Steelers' front six and front seven. That group was healthy, whether we're in 12 personnel, 11 personnel. That's why I use the phrase front six/seven. That group was healthy up there, and they really got beat up. Our front line, I thought, won that battle tonight. Additional to that, we scored a defensive touchdown. Marlon Humphrey returned his fourth quarter interception, 37 yards, really the decisive score in this battle, his sixth pick of the year. The Ravens also won time of possession. They won the turnover battle. They won the battle of the rushing production. And also Lamar Jackson threw a hat trick of red zone touchdowns to cap longer drives. Now pushed the Ravens record to 10-5, heading into their Christmas Day visit to Houston to take on the Texans. I thought the Ravens took advantage, certainly, of some missing players for Pittsburgh in the secondary, and also George Pickens being out as their lead wide receiver. I did think the Ravens' defense at times in the first half looked a little less than prepared, especially during that late first quarter drive when Russell Wilson takes them down 73 yards in 10 plays to tie it up at 7. The Steelers were then able to get a stop, and the play of the game in the first half was Ardarius Washington's fumble on the long scramble by Russell Wilson. A 19-yard scramble. When Ardarius Washington makes contact, I think they're at the 5. The ball ends up being recovered by Kyle Van Noy. Great hustle by him at the 4-yard line. Lamar took the offense in that second quarter down 96 yards in a response. We did lose Justice Hill in the process. He got knocked out by the ground. We ended up with a 17-10 lead at the half. I thought Derrick Henry took over in the second half. He did have some productive touches in the first half as well, but here are his touches after halftime in order. 11-yard run, 11-yard catch, 4-yard run, and then the run for a loss of 1 on what I thought was a really poor decision / play call by Todd Monken. We hurry up out of 11 personnel. We line up with Zay Flowers and our tight end to the right. Of course, we're not running the ball behind Zay Flowers on a 3rd and 1. So we run the ball weak side away from where we have numbers, and the Steelers stack it up. We actually had to punt after stopping the Steelers to open the third quarter. And then once they tied it at 17, Henry has a 16-yard reception on our drive when we go up 24-17. He has a 44-yard run on the second play of the fourth quarter. And then we inexplicably decide to go play action pass on the very next snap. It's really I get it. Justice Hill is out, so Derrick Henry's tired. And that's what some people will say. Derrick Henry's tired. We can't give him ball on every single snap. I disagree. In games like this against the Steelers, give him the ball, period. And especially when you look at the touches in the second half. He's a second half player. That's the reputation he showed up to Baltimore with. And that's proven to be true for us. Here's what I have. His touches in the second half leading up to that play when Todd Monken calls a play action pass with Henry on the field, mind you. I have Henry at 6 touches for 85 yards in the second half. He literally broke the Steelers' front 6 or 7. They just were not stopping him. Of course, we throw the pick. Should Bateman keep running? Should he stop? Is it zone? Is it man? What are him and Lamar reading? I don't care. Run the ball, Todd. Period. We should have been up 27-17 at minimum, or I guess really, you tell me. If we give the ball to Derrick Henry 2 more times in that situation, do they stop him? I don't think so. But that's the play of the game for us on the second half on defense is Marlon Humphrey. He's having a career year. I understand 2019 was unbelievable, but everyone was playing well defensively for us in 2019. So he was in line with what everyone else was getting accomplished on that defense. This year's totally different. If it weren't for some of the plays Marlon Humphrey made earlier in the year against the Bucks, the 2 interceptions in the first half, against the Bengals, the interception in the fourth quarter on the road, how many less wins do we have? It's conceivable we have 2 less wins. But in this case, he had a 37-yard interception return of a throw from Russell Wilson with a little over 13 minutes left. It seals it. I have to mention Ojabo and the tight end are locked up for a moment on that play. It's a designed delay release. So the tight end is designed to block the edge defender, the outside linebacker, in this case Ojabo, and then release to the flats. And check out Ojabo. He's got his hands on the tight end, just like they're locked up together. And then Ojabo bursts. He closes distance downhill towards Wilson. And I don't think he takes on the throwing shoulder. It doesn't look like to me, but our angle's weird on the broadcast. It doesn't look like he takes on the throwing shoulder. It looks like he goes to the middle of Wilson's chest. And I think he impacts the throw. It ends up being inside shoulder throw to the tight end, 81, the same guy, I believe, that had the touchdown in the first half. And Marlon picks it off, runs it into the end zone. He's been our best defensive player in 2024, along with Kyle Van Noy and Kyle Hamilton. Those three have been at the head of the class in each and every game generally. I just think it's interesting on this particular play. Humphrey, the lead guy, is making the punctuation point, the pick six, the score, to put us up 31-17. But Ojabo, someone who's been maligned, clearly he's underperformed. I mean, he's been inactive, I think, 2 or 3 times this season. Played a role. That was a huge moment. Puts us up 14. Really, for all intents and purposes, the game was over so long as the Steelers didn't get a quick touchdown. Again, we're early in the fourth quarter. We forced a punt near midfield. A really nice play from Brandon Stevens on a 3rd and 10 screen to Calvin Austin. Kind of surprising that they threw a screen there, but our mug look kind of elicited that possibly. Stevens makes the tackle, forces a punt. That was it, really. We're up 14 with the football. We, of course, are able to go down and get a field goal. I thought the defense had some good moments overall, but it was frustrating to watch at times in the first half. I don't know about you. Perhaps your perception is different. But when you look at the totality of what they did at the end of the game, Zach Orr's group forced 5 punts. We also made a stop on downs late in the third quarter, and we forced 2 turnovers. Now, Pittsburgh did score 17 points without George Pickens. And so in the first half, that's the frustrating part for me, is that I feel like they get to 10 points, and both of those drives were rather easy. 1 week after they were held to 13 in the road loss to the Eagles. Russell Wilson, to the point where he throws the interception, he's 18 of 26 passing and has been able to scramble around some and create some yards, some space. He did have the critical fumble in the first half when Darius Washington tackled him. I am of the opinion that it's really refreshing to see our defense make the important plays in forcing turnovers, this time against the Steelers, because historically or recently, they've done that to us. And we as fans have left watching, either live or in person, and thought we should have beat them. We have the same feeling as Ravens fans from the Week 11 game this year and from the Week 5 loss in Pittsburgh in 2023. In the last 2 seasons, well, actually, in the last 4 seasons, we'd lost 8 of 9 games. I think tonight is a great example of how important the acquisition of Derrick Henry actually is. Things don't have to be blocked perfectly for him to generate yards. He is in control of the game. Some of these runs are just so well timed. I'm talking about his vision, his ability to get to the lane he needs to be at, but all kind of set up the blocks. He's just a special talent. Tonight we had 418 yards of total offense. That's right in line with the Ravens' average of 424 yards per game coming in. It's also about 100 yards more than during that disappointing loss in Pittsburgh in Week 11, when we were only able to generate 329 yards of offense and turn the football over 3 times. 1 interception tonight by Lamar. His fault, Bateman's fault. I really don't care. He was pretty efficient. 15 of 23 passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 low throw. Second quarter maybe to Flowers, I think. Other than that, again, second week in a row where I felt like he's throwing the ball with the right pace, the right accuracy, and the ball's getting there on time. Witness Bateman's touchdown in the back left corner of the end zone in the first half, very similar to the touchdown that he had last week against the Giants. Also, his slot fade to Zay Flowers on a 3rd down in the fourth quarter. It essentially clinched it if it wasn't already clinched at that point in time. I'm not sure what Lamar and Bateman's read is. I saw Monken's reaction. I am going to focus on, I really don't care whose fault it was between Lamar and Bateman. I'm going to focus on the decision by the people who get paid to make decisions, and that's Todd Monken. Derrick Henry was dominant. I felt like by that point in time, early fourth quarter, we recognized that he was dominating the Steelers' front. And this, to me, still is another example of we kind of go away from him in times where we have the advantage. His touches, as I described earlier, 6 touches for 85 yards in the second half. Do the math. Let me know if you come up with the same thing. I just think give him the ball 2 times, give him the ball 3 times. Just get points there and don't throw a pick. It almost reminds me of, I hate to bring this one up, but it almost reminds me of the loss to the Bengals in the wildcard playoff game in 2022, where we get down there and don't give the ball to J.K. Dobbins. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'm worried that Todd Monken's going to do the same thing in a situation like that in the playoffs. Henry is dominating, kicking ass. Give him the football, let him finish the game, and then utilize Lamar off of Derrick Henry's flow. I thought the Steelers' front got beat up tonight. We finished with 220 yards rushing overall. Justice Hill had 30 yards before he went out with a concussion. Thankfully, he walked off the field. Lamar had 22. This is the 5th time that the Ravens have exceeded 200 yards rushing in a game in 2024. And now we've got a win over the Steelers in a week when, look, we weren't sure if Bateman was going to play. And the Steelers were coming here trying to clinch the AFC North. Now they have to play the Chiefs at home and then the Bengals in the regular season finale. We as Ravens fans are justified in hoping that those 2 teams, the Chiefs and Bengals, have something to compete for in the last 2 weeks of the season. The only caution I would say to that, or chink in that armor, if you will, is that if the Bills were to somehow lose to the Patriots, I know that should not occur. If they were to somehow lose to the Patriots on Sunday, what does Kansas City have to play for? Why do they have to play Mahomes next week in Pittsburgh? They would still stay ahead in the race for home field advantage at this point since they only have 1 loss. And in that scenario, I think the Bills would have 4. With this win, the Ravens have opened up, I think, a whole new set of possibilities. Taking the division that the Steelers have led for most of the year, home game in the opening round of the playoffs. What I'd like to do here is review the 2nd and the 4th possession and just talk about the concepts that the Ravens are using, how many different players have an impact on offense. It seemed like we used a ton of trips and bunch sets early. In our first 3 possessions, I have like 80% of our plays in trips or bunch. Trips and bunch are each 3-by-1 formations, so 3 receivers to one side. Some of the receivers can be tight ends. I just refer to them as receivers because they're eligible, and then 1 receiver backside to the weak side. You can see on this second possession here, after we really wasted the first one, that we're in bunch or trips, 3-by-1 sets, every single play except the 5th snap. Hayward gets a TFL with Highsmith. I really felt like tonight Hayward's lack of lateral movement was exposed on some outside run stuff to our left. I did see 2 runs where he doesn't lose the block to Macari, but he's just not able to move laterally once Henry gets to the line of scrimmage. But in this particular case on the second possession, he had a tackle for loss on a 1st and goal from the 7. We had got down there because of 3 runs from Henry, in a row that produced first downs or got close to it. The first one looked like a dual read up the middle. It was a huge run at a bunch closed A. That's the 1st and 10 from the 41-yard line. After the good punt return by Desmond King and the fumble that I think was recovered by Chris Board. Second play was a trap that I think Henry cuts it back. I think Henry goes totally against the grain of the concept or the design. I might be wrong. We'll see the end zone angle when that one comes out. He gets a 9-yard gain on the 3rd one and then a 1-yard gain for the 1st down. 4th carry in a row, 5th carry in a row. Hayward is there. Highsmith is there. I think Ricard had went in motion, and the Steelers pretty much knew where the football was going. And then Likely was wide open on the right side. Look, it's a variation, this first touchdown, of bunch right with a quick pitch and then the quick pitch fake pass that Devontae Walker scored on last week. It's a very similar concept, except this time Likely slides out into the flats. I think the Steelers covered the seam route, which would have been Devontae Walker's route from last year. It's a really cool adaptation off of it. I'm looking forward to seeing Todd Monken add other elements, maybe a play to the backside off of that fake motion. But in any case, we didn't score on a 3rd possession. the Steelers had gone down and tied it. That was the moment. That was a moment where the defense, I thought, looked vulnerable. Russell Wilson was under control, dumping the ball off to running backs. They didn't get the run game really churning tonight. I think 121 on the ground total for the Steelers. I may have that number wrong. 117. Russell Wilson accounted for 27 yards of that, including the 19-yarder, where Ardarius Washington was able to dislodge the football. We get it back on our fourth possession and only had to convert one third down. That's the third down that is to Bateman to get the touchdown to make it 14-7. And so I show you these possessions to illustrate on all of these plays here, we only had to convert one third down. It's not like the Steelers were contesting things at times in short space, compressed space, but outside zone concepts, things that were more so to the outside, I thought they had more difficulty with. Number one, our foot speed, we looked faster than them, and that kind of lines up with what I saw on film prior to the Week 11 matchup. I thought that they were a team that wouldn't be able to keep up with us from a foot speed standpoint. That kind of bore itself out tonight. Unfortunately, the fourth possession is Justice Hill getting knocked out. I think he got knocked out by the ground. It looked really ugly. He walked off, thankfully. I think they took him to a hospital. Hopefully he's okay. The fact that he was able to get up and walk off was encouraging, if you ask me. It was a 25-yard gain by him after a 5-yard gain on a draw concept. Lamar had a beautiful pass on this drive. It was a 2nd and 8 pass to Likely. It's the second play down from the top for the fourth possession. It's a play-action concept out of 12 personnel flex, and it's to Likely against their smaller nickel defender, Bishop. He's the same guy that Flowers beats on a slot fade later on. I'm going to tell you something that we talked about him in our Discord, and he's a rookie, so I'm sure he'll get better in ensuing seasons and hopefully has a long career. Nothing personal against him, but I don't think he starts for our defense. And that's with the Steelers actually do play him a lot when all of their DBs are healthy. That's a weakness that I think some of us identified going into the game in Week 11. Of course, we may see the Steelers again in the playoffs. So that's a matchup, in my opinion, a guy that we can go at with the pass game. Third and fourth plays of the fourth possession is a draw to Hill, like I said, and then the 25-yard gain that was against motion. Zay Flowers on the dig concept, I think it's a 14-yard gain, and then there's a penalty for 15-yard face mask on Fitzpatrick. Andrews, a lot of contact on the 2nd and 8 pass play against Queen. They tried to match up Queen against Andrews, and I thought he was really physical on two particular snaps. This one, Lamar threw it up high to try to get it away from Queen, and Andrews was unable to come down with it. So it's 2nd and 8. At that point, it's 7-all. And the concept that we used on this 3rd and 8 to Bateman, the touchdown to Bateman to make it 14-7, very similar to the concept that Bateman caught a touchdown on last week against the Giants in the back left corner of the end zone. Essentially a deeper corner out route with Likely in the flats. Brady talked about the corner biting, taking the bait, taking the cheese, I think is what he said, in the flats. And that's partially true. If he lays off a little bit, then maybe that throw isn't as open. But the inside linebacker, Queen in this case, he didn't have leverage to respond to Likely's route in the flat either. So on the 3rd and 8 from the 14, if Isaiah Likely catches the ball, let's say, and he's 4 or 5 yards downfield, and Queen is recovering from the inside, and there's a little tiny corner out there near the sideline, Likely's going to get the first down. So I think from a conceptual standpoint, we've just done a nice job recently of identifying cover 2 situations to our left into the boundary and then attacking them, because Lamar and Bateman have hooked up on touchdowns twice on those concepts in the last 2 weeks. Van Noy, from a defensive standpoint, to focus on that for a minute, he finished with 1.5 sacks. He did get the split sack with Matabike. It was a really nice stunt, a switch rush in the first half. He had 3 quarterback hits total. Now on the year, he has 10.5. I don't know about you, what social media you utilize or follow, but the one that I do, generally, Twitter, a ton of criticism was out there about Van Noy about like a month ago when he had 7 sacks in our first 7 games. And I think he didn't have a single sack for the next 4. I could be wrong. But he was injured. And tonight, he looked healthy. He looked healthy last week. He now has 4 games in 2024 of either having 2 sacks or being involved in 1 or more sacks like tonight, 1.5. I think that's pretty remarkable. Glad that we have him signed for 2025 to bring him back to provide depth and options there at outside linebacker. Pierce also had a sack. I think his was in the first quarter. Roquan Smith had 10 tackles. Darius Washington played well again, had the great forced fumble on Wilson in the first half. I thought he had a really nice run fit. That forced fumble on Wilson, look, it changed the tone. It changed the game flow of tonight's contest. If the Steelers are able to go down there and get a touchdown, and they certainly looked like they were at that point, it's a totally different game. Kyle Hamilton, to talk about him for a minute, he had a really nice sequence in the third quarter. I did think that he had poor eye discipline on one of the completions, the early completions to Brent Skowronek. The other one was a man situation, 3rd and 6, where he beats Marlon Humphrey. I just don't think Marlon Humphrey can lose that. With the amount that we're paying him, and as well as he's played in 2024, he can't lose that matchup. But in any case, Kyle Hamilton had a really amazing sequence in the third to fourth quarter bridge. The last play of the third quarter is a 3rd and 7. Steelers have the ball just past midfield, in fact. I think on our 47. So short completion to Jaylen Warren underneath our zone. Russell Wilson seems to specialize in those. And we seem to give those up. We seem to cede that ground. He catches it, and how many times has Warren caught a pass or ran the ball against us in the last couple of years and broken a couple of tackles? Well, this was perfect by Kyle Hamilton. Well-timed, accurate, on the outside hip, outside portion of Warren's body, and it dislodges the football while stopping all of his momentum. We were already up 24-17. That was a huge play, I thought. They were already past midfield. To not just tackle him and stop all of his momentum completely. He's a little bowling ball. He just bounces off of things. We forced a fumble, and there was some discussion, were they going to go for it, how much time was left, etc. The replay assist basically gave them more time, I think, and allowed them to run out the third quarter, where I felt like they weren't going to be able to do so, but I could be wrong there in that regard. We didn't know what they were going to do on the first play of the fourth quarter. Were they going to snap it? Were they going to take the delay and then just punt? It was a 4th and 6, one play after Hamilton's tackle on Warren, but it was 4 or 5 minutes of actual time later. Well, they actually did snap the ball, and Russell Wilson chooses to go deep down the middle of the field. It was to Calvin Austin in the middle of the field, and sure enough, Kyle Hamilton, the same guy who just made a tackle on Warren to force the fumble, is there to get a pass defense. The ball actually went through Hamilton's hands, but those 2 plays in a row, I think, illustrates the versatility and the talent level that he has because of the location on the field. One of them is 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, the tackle, forced fumble on Warren. The other is 40 yards down the field, critical situation, first play of the fourth quarter. Hamilton makes both of them. Big turning point, in my opinion. Even though we have the interception 2 plays later, like I've talked about earlier, Henry has a 44-yard run, broke their front. Lamar throws a pick on the next snap. I think that play by Hamilton is a huge moment for our defense. And sure enough, we were able to get stops pretty much thereafter. Look, the Steelers' defense was without Deshaun Elliott. They're without Dante Jackson. Joey Porter got hurt, and K-back then left for good. By the way, his injury was a result of trying to tackle Derrick Henry. Henry's our best weapon. I don't know where we are at this point if we're not willing to recognize this. He's the guy that can carry this offense and create space for other players because of his gravity and play action. Lamar does the same thing with his gravity. But those 2 guys on any mesh, that's the most dangerous play concept for me. So when I say he's our best weapon, here's what I mean. Whether it's under center, whether it's shotgun or pistol, if Lamar and Derrick Henry are meshing, so it could be a run play to Henry, could be a play action, that's our best offense for me. It's our most effective from a yards per play standpoint, I think from a reducing turnover standpoint, and also setting up other things for later in the game, setting up some of our complementary players. The reality is, though, we have 2 or 3 or perhaps 4 other offenses that we can, in fact, run, and they all have their place. But tonight, it was Derrick Henry. He now, if you don't know, he now has 1,636 rushing yards in 2024. That's his second highest total ever for a season. But it's also his highest yards per carry in his NFL career. I'm not sure if you knew that. So far in his career, he has 2,000-yard season, He has a pair of 1,500-yard years, the last of which was 2022. And now, with 2 games remaining in 2024, he's over 1,600 yards rushing. It's just an incredible asset to have. I don't, myself included, I don't think we all even understand how much of an impact he's had. I haven't mentioned other guys offensively. Zay Flowers had another 100-yard game, his 5th of the year. Mark Andrews scored yet another touchdown. I think he has 9 receiving touchdowns this year, including a touchdown in each of the last 4 football games. I think the perception, actually I know, the perception on social media for Steelers fans is going to be how many injuries they had, how many guys that didn't play, how healthy was TJ Watt. I mean, we actually ran 2 designed rollouts to TJ Watt's side, which we really never do. Even still, this is a good win because we won up front. And that's the part that I'll contest with anyone who wants to downplay this win because of all the guys that the Steelers didn't have. The Steelers had 117 yards rushing. We had 220. They also didn't have consistent impact with that run game. Like I said, Russell Wilson had 27 yards on the ground. Their front 6 or 7, they got gashed by our option concepts. They got gashed by our typical run plays. We got horizontal movement on people. Some of their better interior guys, Benton, Hayward, etc., they were not able to get off blocks and make tackles by the time Henry's getting downhill. Our one-back run game looked very Titans-esque at times, in my opinion. A couple of play calls I would have liked to have had back, or would like to have questioned Todd Monken and say, hey, why do we have to hurry up on every 3rd and 1? Why don't we get the proper guys on the field for the run concepts that we think are our best short yardage options or best opportunities to convert on 3rd and 1? I get it. We want to hustle up to the line on a 3rd and 1 and try to convert it. This Steelers team seems to be one of them. One team, one defense that has been able to halt us in those moments. And I would like to see us get the right look on the field, get better run blocking personnel out there if that's the chosen concept that we want to go with. I don't know about you. I keep waiting for the Lamar boot stuff, that like the touchdown that he had last year against the Texans in the division round win. Maybe we'll see it next week when we go down to Houston and play them on Christmas Day. In any case, this is my reaction video to the Ravens' 34-17 win over the Steelers. One that feels good, that should feel good for Ravens fans, that we have cause to celebrate because it's a Steelers team that competes and it isn't normally going to beat themselves. Unfortunately for them, they did, in fact, do that tonight with the fumble by Russell Wilson inside our 5, and then the interception that Marlon Humphrey took back to the house. They really clinched it early in the 4th quarter. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this reaction video and some of my thoughts and the patterns of play that I chose to focus on, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.